What happens when a psychology PhD swaps research papers for mango farming? Kayla Morris's non-conventional career adventure proves that critical thinking skills can flourish in any industry you choose. Professionally Psyched is the podcast that brings you cutting-edge psychology research and real-world insights from our psych community of clinicians, researchers, and educators alike. In our special alumni spotlights, we chat to graduates from our psychology degree programs about how their skills learned in the classroom have become powerful tools supporting diverse career journeys and successes. Hi everyone and welcome to Professionally Psyched. I'm Jessica Muller, PhD candidate in Public Health at James Cook University, and before we get started we'd like to acknowledge the custodians of the land on which we record, and for me today that's the Bindal and Wulgurukaba peoples. And I pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples and cultures from wherever you may be tuning in from across the country. In this alumni spotlight, Dr. Amanda Krause speaks with Kayla Morris, a JCU Psychology PhD graduate, about her progression from academic research to health charity leadership and now agricultural entrepreneurship. So grab your headphones and get ready to get professionally psyched about viewing your degree as a toolkit of transferable skills. Enjoy.
Kayla, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. To start, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Kayla Morris. I am a JCU alumni. I studied psychology. I then did a PhD at JCU as well, which was around a behavioral science topic.
And I know there are probably a few steps from getting your undergraduate and going into a PhD to where you are today. So could you tell us a little bit about how your career has progressed from being an undergraduate?
Sure. Whenever I'm asked to describe my career, I always start off by saying I have a very non-conventional pathway to where I've ended up, I think. It's certainly not what I imagined when I was sitting in undergrad land, wondering what the future looked like for me. So I did my undergrad, and then there's, of course, the embedded honours within the psych course at JCU. So I did my honours, which is straight run through. And then the following year, I decided to do a PhD, which I then did the PhD in 4.5 years or whatever it was, and then went into a different role at JCU where I was a data specialist. And so that was a really great experience for me because I got to work across the university, so across all colleges and divisions. And then I had a career break to have a baby, and then went back to Academy land, as we call it, teaching, lecturing, researching, did that for, a couple of years. And then ended up leaving JCU to go and manage a health promotion charity, which was focused on research, philanthropic health service, and workforce development. So I did that for about 3 years or so. And today I come to you from my mango farm. So my husband and I purchased his family's mango farm. And so now I am a mango grower / business owner. So now I'm sure you understand what I mean by a non-conventional career path, which has landed me where I am today.
And I have so many questions about mangoes, but before we jump into mangoes, I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about your data role, reflecting on the skills or the subjects that you had in undergraduate and how that prepared you to take on that sort of role.
The most valuable subjects I didn't realize it at the time. I didn't even particularly enjoy them at the time, but it was statistics. But not just statistics, it's the research methodology and the ethics training. So as a graduate of the 4-year program, you will come out of that degree with critical thinking skills, research, design, and methodology skills, and a pretty good idea about the ethical conduct of research, at least the principles of it, if you've not got to really stretch your legs in that zone in your honours or 4th-year project. You will at least have the principles of research with humans. And then, of course, the analysis, like statistical analysis, and the inferences that you can draw from those analyses. So I think everyone coming out of the 4-year program is ahead of the average bear, if you like. And that's domain knowledge, independent of what subjects you really studied, whether you had a particular interest in. The core skills you get from doing the core subjects, you will have that as you come out. And that was critical for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose then that set you up to move into the charity work. How did research fit into the charity work you were doing?
I sort of came to that role because it was this medical specialist out in the community had this idea, this passion. He wanted to start this thing. He knew he needed someone to work with him on that one for no other reason other than he's like phenomenally busy. He was asking around, who is out in the ether that might be interested in doing this. And around that same time, I'd been telling colleagues, people within the university who I knew well, that my real passion was in research and I really wanted to get into research management, applied research. I'd done a whole bunch of stuff in the health space. So I'd worked at places like Q Health doing research throughout my PhD program as well. So I think that's how I came to that role. And it's no doubt the PhD is what got me that role and ultimately equipped me with the skills to even be bold enough to take the leap into doing that. But then, of course, there was another very steep learning curve because there's so much involved with governance of an organization like that and just the hoops even to jump through to get registered as a charity and yada, yada, yada. But it was so exciting to be part of something that was going to have a very real impact, a positive impact for the community.
And speaking of giant leaps, I would imagine moving to a mango farming situation is also a giant leap. So I'd love to hear more about your current role in your day-to-day and what's involved with all of that.
Well, I guess the farm came with the husband in a way, because it was always part of the plan. The plan was always to one day end up farming. I grew up in a rural community as well. We both did. I mean, he obviously grew up much closer to farming. It was his family's farm. So it was always part of the plan. But you're right, it was a leap. But I think if you're thinking about it from a family perspective, it just made complete sense. But in terms of my day-to-day role today, like you might think, and I'm sure people have thought, oh, what a waste of skill or training or, you spend all this time building these skills and doing this work and now you're in inverted, just a farmer. But I can tell you that there is so much to farming and agriculture, particularly horticulture. Growers are like environmentalists in a way, like we're responsible for managing our land and looking after our property and we have a neighboring creek. And so we're very mindful of how we fit in with nature. You have to be almost a chemist to understand crop inputs and pest management. And so there's a lot even on the agronomy side. And then there's the whole business side, which is marketing and financial skills and building relationships and engaging with industry and understanding regulatory frameworks and compliance with food safety, workplace health safety, customer requirements, social responsibility requirements, and ethical supply chain, and the list goes on and on and on. Every little piece that I've learned along the way and all the different roles that I've had. And I didn't even mention R&D that we get involved in. So we get involved with research and development as well on the farm. So there's been a lot of touch points throughout my career which support the work I'm doing now, without a doubt.
Yeah, certainly. And, we think of mangoes and you spoke to the agricultural side, but so much more is those relationships with people and the marketing side of things. So I imagine there's quite a bit of your psychology background and none of that being wasted training at all for your current role.
No, that's right. And I mean, so much of life is relationships. And I think, the psych degree gives you insight into human behavior and maybe even motivation and perspective taking and understanding people from having different perspectives. So that there's that. And then there's also just the experience that you gain throughout your career along the way, reaching and understanding that everything in life really, like without getting too deep, but it's about relationships. Businesses are, it's a make or break. If you can maintain good relationships with customers, wholesalers, suppliers, industry representatives, and it goes on and on. Like, so much of it is about connection.
Absolutely. So if we're thinking about the next generation of psychology graduates navigating through their careers, is there an emerging issue or something that you think is a really big problem that you see in the work that you're doing that you think the next generation will come about and be able to tackle?
Oof. In a time where we're seeing increasing tech and the sheer volume of data that's produced and used for decision making, I think that for the psych graduates, their real value proposition in the workplace is possibly the interpretation of that data and how you can draw inferences from that. Because there is a lot of data, but someone still needs to make sense of it and needs to be able to apply it in a way that is meaningful. And I think that is a skill that's really undersold, especially from behavioral science. So it's the behavioral science component of the degree that maybe we don't think too explicitly about, but it's about connecting the dots.
I absolutely agree, but I'm reflecting on something you said earlier and something that will resonate with a lot of students of when they start taking statistics and research methods classes, they might not like them. They might not think that they're value, but that we see this value later. And so do you have any top tips or recommendations for our students who maybe don't like that subject, but they have to take it and they're going to be able to use that in their career?
Yeah. As I said before, I guess I come at it a bit differently too, because I'm thinking about where are those transferable skills. So when I was in my third year, it was explained to me that the value of a psychology graduate is that you can go into a workplace, an industry, whatever, and you may not have the information, but you know how to go and get it. So you can conceptualize a problem, understand that there's a solution that you're trying to get to, and so that you can take those steps and it's about applying the critical thinking, interpreting, and research, but it's also just information in the world in a more holistic way to get to the outcome you're trying to chase. And that for me was a real turning point in the way I thought about what my career would look like. Because for the first 2-3 years, those alternative pathways aren't shown to you. Well, they weren't shown to my generation of undergrads, in that it was almost impossible to visualize any alternative outcome, except maybe your lecturers standing in front of the sage on the stage. It was that or clinician. And it was sort of like, they're my two options. But the reality is that I think that if you can think about your degree in terms of what are the transferable skills you will take with you, you can put those anywhere, into your own business, into other industry, into just about any applied setting that you can think of. Those skills go with you, and that is the value. And unfortunately, as you said, I 100% know the general vibe when it comes to the stat subjects. And it's not for everyone. And as I said, I didn't love it at the time. It's not till you take those skills and do something with them that they become interesting. So for me, it wasn't until I got to my 4th year and I could sink my teeth into a project and I could design the methodology and I was doing the statistics and I was into the data enough to understand all the quirks and idiosyncrasies and the coding and the way it happened. That's when statistics got interesting for me. But it's not just the stats. It's the methodology, it's the design, it's the ethics, it's the connecting the dots in the literature, finding the gaps, It's a whole piece of work where at the end you go, I now understand this so much better than I ever did before.
I love that. I love thinking about it as the transferable skills, because even as your career demonstrates, right, you're not going to necessarily just going to go into one job. You might pivot to other things. You might not even know today what you're going to be doing later in the life, but it is those transferable skills.
I can remember being told that we were of a generation that would experience probably 5 or 6 career changes in our lifetime. And at the time, you sort of think, as if. But you know what? That's true. The jobs that you will apply for probably don't even exist yet. And that speaks to the fact that we're in an age of entrepreneurship and rapid changing in industries, and the way that technology forces change within those industries. So I think don't be too rigid in your thinking, because it can restrict you and box you in. And the other thing I would say is back yourself in. Often the greatest gains or the greatest wins will come from taking the leap, being a little bit terrified, but also just backing yourself in to go, well, at the very least, I have these skills and I can market myself on these particular skills or this set of experiences or passion or whatever it might be. Back yourself in. Don't be scared to take the leap into something new, because you just never know where it will lead you to.
I love that. That's a wonderful place to end on. And Kayla, I just want to thank you for coming on the podcast today.
No worries. Thanks so much. I hope this has been worthwhile listening.
Thanks for listening to Professionally Psyched. This podcast wouldn't be possible without the ongoing support of our Psych community. If you'd like to show your support, or if you want us to cover anything on the pod, reach out via our emails, and don't forget you can listen to full episodes on Spotify.